Hi everyone, my name is Annie with Redmond Mag, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. The topic of today's webcast is Snackable Active Directory Security, sponsored by Semperis. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the event, so please type any questions you may have in the Q&A box on your console. And Semperis has provided some resources which correspond with today's event, so please take a moment to check those out as well. And today's webcast is being recorded, so keep an eye out for a link in your email to rewatch the presentation or share with a colleague. And now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Chris Stephen, Solutions Architect at Semperis. So we are in for a great event, and with that, I'll pass the time over to Chris to get us started.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's get started by understanding what Snackable Active Directory Security even means. And what we'll do is, this is going to be the first episode, hopefully. If this goes well and you guys enjoy it, what we'll do is we'll actually have a second episode where we'll focus on a slightly different tool and a slightly different idea. We'll use the Semperis other tool called Forest Druid to look at Active Directory and see what we can do with that within 30 minutes. First of all, just for a quick introduction, this is me. I've been in IT for 20 or so years, so fairly old. Had a somewhat regular job title, job path from help desk to server manager to regional infrastructure manager, all the way back to a IT security architect working for a largish oil and gas company. From then I moved to where I am today, Semperis, working as a solutions architect for the pre-sales team out in EMEA, so spreading the good word of the Semperis products. I am based in Scotland, so yes, I do have a kilt. No, I do not live in a castle, and I don't believe I have much of an accent, but if I do say something and you can't understand what I'm saying, please go ahead and just ask me to repeat myself. I will not take any offense on that at all. Okay. So, making a positive impact in an environment in 30 days, is it realistic? Is it something that we can really try to do and try to obtain? Well, yes, I believe so. But first, what I'll do is I'll explain where the idea for this webinar session came from. Okay. A long time ago, when I was trying to learn PowerShell, I actually purchased a book called PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, which is a great book if you've never used it and you want to try and learn PowerShell. It's great. We do a whole bunch of series on Git, SQL, and all that kind of fun stuff. The idea of that book is that over a period of lunch hours, either 30 minutes or 60 minutes a day, you're making these small changes, you're learning small amounts, that at the end of it, what you have is you come away with a better understanding of PowerShell. You're able to build PowerShell tools and do that kind of cool stuff. And I thought, I wonder if we could apply that to AD security. Could we take 30 minutes a day, make small changes, and try and impact our environment in a positive way? Can we fix everything in an environment in 30 minutes? Absolutely not. Should we rush to try and fix everything in 30 minutes? Absolutely not. Can we find some sort of positive impact that we can make within 30 minutes? Absolutely. Absolutely we can. And I strongly believe that we can, and I will go through hopefully a live demo with you guys and show you how we can do that type of analysis in 30 minutes, make some quick changes in an environment and really improve our security posture. Okay. So why do we even care about Active Directory in the first place? Well, it's fairly obvious for most people. Okay, it's almost everywhere. 90% of organizations have Active Directory. It's their primary identity source. AD is extremely easy to deploy. You can deploy an Active Directory environment or an Active Directory forest in an hour. What's really hard is to deploy it securely on scale. Okay. It's also incredibly hard to move away from. Okay, so once you have Active Directory, you start getting those legacy applications, and if you have a lot of that on-prem stuff, trying to move to the cloud, trying to move away from it is somewhat complicated. It's also the primary attack point for most attackers seeking to compromise environments. Okay, so if I was looking to, let's say, compromise your Salesforce environment, Well, there's a chance that you're going to have Active Directory on-prem. I could just fish an employee and start with Active Directory and still end up in your Salesforce environment. Okay, so it's really key for me is that we kind of protect our Active Directory environment as much as we can. Active Directory is also really, really old. Okay, initially it was released in February 2000, and I think early February 2000. It's also been upgraded ever since. Okay, came out at the same time as the Nokia 3310, the Linksys router that almost everybody had when broadband first came out, the Intel Pentium 4, PlayStation 2, and even the movie Gladiator came out in 2000. Okay, and if you look at Russell Crowe in Gladiator in 2000, he does not look like Russell Crowe today. So that's just exactly what Active Directory is. It's old. It's had constant updates. It's probably had dozens, if not hundreds, of different domain admins coming into an environment thinking the way that they were doing it was the best way, even with the changes that we've had from Microsoft moving to things like the Red Forest and moving away from the Red Forest back to a tiering model. And then we have the cloud. Okay, the cloud came along. Now all of a sudden everybody's taking their on-premise stuff, and now they want to make everything move and work for the cloud. Everyone wants to extend their identities into M365, into Entra, into Salesforce, into Monday.com. The thing they all have in common is everybody still needs to use Active Directory to do it. So let's discuss about assessing your security posture. And what we'll do first is we'll have a really quick poll here. Okay, I'll leave these questions up on the screen for a couple of minutes for everybody just to read to get an idea. So the question is, how often do you scan the security posture of your identity stores? Now, your identity stores can be Active Directory, it could be Entra ID, it could be Okta, for example. Do you do it constantly using a tool such as Semperis Directory Services Protector to provide that constant update of the security posture score of your environment? Do you do it regularly using a tool such as Purple Knight? Maybe you're scanning it once a week as part of some sort of housekeeping. Do you do it once a month? Maybe, when you remember? Or security posture, what does that even mean? I've never run this before. I just came here to figure out what I could actually do, what I could find out today. So I'll give you a couple of seconds for everybody to answer. Let me just move my microphone. I did see just a comment. Okay, so I will just skip this in just 1 second, give everybody just a couple more seconds to answer. Okay, we got to get my answers in here. Let's go. Okay, so this is interesting. So not many people are actually scanning it, what I would say, in a proactive manner. Okay, proactive for me would be either regularly or constantly, at least once a month. That's good. That's fine. Security posture. Let's try and change your guys' mind. And let's hopefully at the end of this, you're able to go ahead and take something positive away from today. Download Purple Knight, run it in your environment, and at least we're off to the once a month stage. Okay. So what are we actually going to do today? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use a free tool from Semperis called Purple Knight. And what we're going to do, we're going to use that tool to scan our Active Directory environment. Okay, we're going to get an idea of where we are today, because without knowing where we are, we can't really make any positive change into an environment. Okay, we're going to look against indicators of exposure in an environment, and we're going to see where our security posture score lies. Okay. Purple Knight gives you the ability to scan 100+ indicators for Active Directory across 6 categories, things like AD delegation, AD security, group policy, and that kind of stuff. What we're not going to do today, but Purple Knight does support, is the ability to scan Azure AD, also known as Entra ID now, and it's got around 30 indicators of its own. And you can actually also configure Purple Knight to scan against against Okta, with currently 10 indicators for Okta. So it gives you an idea how you can scan multiple identity stores from one simple interface, get one simple report out, and start to make the positive changes in your environment. Okay. When we scan these, I mentioned categories. What we're going to do is we're going to scan them across a bunch of different categories. Okay. AD delegation, security, group policy, Kerberos. If we were connected to Entra and Azure, we will unleash the category called hybrid, where it's going to look for things on-prem that can reach out to the cloud, and we can start to look at some remediation efforts for that. Okay. On each indicator that we see, and what we're going to do is we're going to break it down. We're going to start to look at, first of all, the severity. Okay, we're going to try and analyze the environment. We're going to try and prioritize remediation by looking at the indicators. They're either going to be critical, warning, or informational. Okay, and then even after that, what we'll do is we'll start to look at the security frameworks. Okay, we'll discuss where and how these can be mapped against both the MITRE ATT&CK and defend framework, as well as ANSI. Okay, so we can understand where and how a threat actor may use these in an environment, and as defenders, where we can use these to kind of hopefully keep the bad guys at bay. Okay. After that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the remediation steps. Okay, so each of our indicators will provide you with a description of what that's actually looking at, the likelihood of compromise, as in how likely is this to happen in an environment, as well as remediation steps that, okay, this indicator does exist in your environment. We need to go ahead and we need to go and make some remediation efforts in an environment. Okay. If you're interested at all in what a default Active Directory environment looks like and what it gets in terms of a score from Purple Knight, I did scan these various versions of Windows, which is funny because for me, 2003 R2 is one of the most secure because it has the least things there. 2000, I couldn't actually get Windows Server 2000 to actually work. Kept on getting a blue screen, which brought back flashbacks of working as a system administrator and having to deal with Server 2000. So I didn't spend too much time on that. Okay. With that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to try and switch into a live demo. And what we'll do is we'll actually start running the tool. We're going to take a look at what we can do. We'll talk through the environment. We'll make some positive changes. After that, what we'll do is we'll rescan the environment probably a couple of times, and we'll start to notice that we're going from a particular score to a slightly better security posture. And I'll show you how we're doing that with the tool. Okay. Let me just share my screen. And can someone just give me a quick thumbs up in the Q&A if they can see my screen? You should see a Hyper-V ups. Looks good. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is I'm just going to log on to the domain controller. And let's just talk about a couple of things first, okay? I'm going to run everything from a domain controller. This is not best practice. It's not recommended practice. This is just for a demo. Purple Knight does not require domain access rights to run. It does not require domain admin. You can run it as a standard user on any domain joined system. Okay, so run it as a low privileged user on a standard Windows 11 desktop, and you'll still see the same as what I'm going to see today. Okay. Now in my environment, this is a test demo environment. Okay. I do not need to raise any change requests. I can make changes in this environment. I'm not going to impact production. I'm not going to take anything down. So please, please, please do not make changes in your environment without the proper approval in place. Okay. So what we'll do is I'll give you a quick overview of the environment, and then we'll discuss Purple Knight, how we download it, how we run it. Okay. So this is my fictitious company, goodcompany.com. They have a fairly nice Active Directory environment. It looks very clean. They have started building out a tier model, so they're tiering for clouds and all that kind of fun stuff. Okay, so you would look at it, you would think this looks quite manageable, quite clean. Okay, so the first thing that we would do is we would go to the Purple Knight website. So www.semperis.com/purple-knight. We will click the download button. Okay. You will then receive an email for Purple Knight to allow you to download it. When you download Purple Knight, what you'll get is a zip file. Okay, so everything required to run Purple Knight is in an encrypted zip, is in a zip file. What you want to do, you want to extract that zip file. And once we extract it, it will look a lot like this. Okay. So everything is included. Purple Knight is the main executable file here. We have the release notes. Inside the Purple Knight folder called scripts, we'll actually show you all the scripts that we're going to run. in the environment. These are all PowerShell scripts. You can go into any single one of these. You can click right in, and you can see exactly the PowerShell that's being run for each indicator. Okay. So very simple to download, very simple to get running. And once you're running it, this is what it looks like. We have the license agreement, which you'll obviously read, you'll pay attention to, and then you'll click next. And then we have the three options, okay? We're not going to run against Okta and Entra, i.e. Azure AD. But what I'll show you is, if we were to connect to Okta, what we would need to implement is we need to implement our Okta domain and our Okta API token. Okay, once we put those in, this test connection button will come active, and we're good to go. Similar with Entra ID, Azure AD Connect, this does require an application registration, the details of which are in the documentation. Everything's just read-only. It doesn't require any write access. And all it's going to do is it's going to make that connection with the tenant ID, the application ID, and the application secret. Okay. We'll hit test connection. It's going to connect to the tenant. The connection is just stored in memory. So as soon as you close Purple Night, no details are saved there. Okay. We're focusing on Active Directory, so I'm just going to select the Active Directory option. Just select the domain, ad.company.com, and what we'll do is we'll just click on the next button. Now these are the categories that I spoke about, and what you can see is each category, we have the ability to go through, we can see what the indicator is, it gives us an idea of what we're looking at. You can select to run certain indicators, all of them, or you can exclude them. Okay. What you'll notice here is that we have 110 available, and we've only have 109 selected. Okay. By default, there is an indicator in here for zero logon, and that does not run by default. Okay, I'm not going to run it in my environment. Just be aware that if you try to run the zero logon indicator, it can trigger things like Microsoft Defender for Identity. Okay, because it's using the same checks that somebody that would be using zero logon in a bad way to verify that that can actually work in your environment. Okay. I'll say run tests. It's going to go through, it's going to scan all 109 indicators. And what we'll see shortly is this will start to, these will start to run. And as they're running, they start to populate. So you start to see we're getting some real time. Got some issues already. Red obviously means critical, green means that we passed. So we'll just let this complete. And what we should see shortly is our first indication of how secure or the security posture for our environment and what that actually looks like. Now in a larger environment, this can take slightly longer, but it's still a lot quicker than doing this manually. So we're at 109. What we should see is the screen should go there, and we get our first indication of what our environment looks like. So for me, looking at this, we've got a D, 63% of stuff passed. We have room for improvement. And straight away, we can see that we have 23 IOEs. Okay. What I'll do here, I'm going to click View Report. It's going to open this up in the browser, and we'll come back to that in just a sec. Now, Purple Night does give you the ability to save the reports to different formats. Okay, by default, it's going to save an HTML report, and it's going to save the XLS report, so a Microsoft Excel. What I'll do is I'll actually show you something that you can do with the Excel report, which is quite cool if we have time, and I'll show you how we can use PowerShell to actually read the Excel report and create a remediation worklist for us. Right now, I'm also going to choose to save the full PDF report, and it's going to save it in the default Purple Night directory. Okay. So now we have the first indication of what our environment is. So we definitely have room for improvement. You'll see that we have 23 indicators that we have found. We have 83 that we passed, so that's good. We have a couple that are not relevant, most likely related to the hybrid environment and things like that. Straight away, our priority is to fix critical indicators. Okay? Critical indicators are those indicators that we see in environments that have been known to lead to direct domain compromise or they may be being abused by a threat actor to maintain persistence in an environment. Okay. Some of these can be extremely obvious, some of them not so much. So for example, straight away I look at this and I'll say, okay, well, we have the print spooler service enabled on the domain controller. Well, everybody remembers Print Nightmare. I don't have any printers on this domain controller, so straight away I'm thinking I can just turn off the print spooler on. Okay. We have non-default principles with DC sync rights on the domain. We'll take a look at what that actually means. And then we have a couple indicators related to admin SD holder and inheritance on admin SD holder. We scroll down really quickly. What we'll see is we have those warning indicators and we have the informationals. Okay, so now we have a starting point. Okay, so our mission by the end of today is to improve that 63% and get it somewhere a little bit better. Try and reduce the risk environment. Okay, so what I'll start with is let's take a look at the print spooler indicator. We can see it's critical. It has a weighting of 10. We can see how it maps against the security frameworks for both monitor, attack, and defend. We can see, scroll down here, that we have the result. The print spooler is running on one domain controller. I only have one domain controller. And then it's telling us some remediation guidance here. Now this is going to tell us that you don't need the print spooler to disable it, and that's what we're going to do. And if I did have an internet connection available on this virtual machine, we could actually click this out and go to Microsoft, get some guidance there. So what we'll do is we'll actually just quickly remediate this one. So what we'll do is we'll remediate this just locally by disabling the print spooler. Now, if this was a corporate environment, a large environment, doing this per domain controller is not particularly scalable. So as long as you're not hosting printers on domain controllers, you should actually set this by default, for example. Okay. Let's click back on the indicators of exposure and let's look at the next one. The next one that we'll focus on is non-default principles of DC sync rights. What does that even mean? So let's look at it. The criticality is 8, so fairly high. This is mapped against both the MITRE attack and the ANSI framework. And what this is saying is that we have a security ID, so a security principal, a user account, a service account, a user, for example, that has the ability to replicate changes in Active Directory. Now, this can mean changes that include password hashes, for example, which opens us up to a DC sync attack, which is not great. And if we don't need those permissions, that's something we should absolutely remove from the environment. So the results are telling us that we have one account, there's replicate admin account, it has extended rights, we can do DC get changes all, so it can replicate all passwords across the environment. Now I know in my environment that this is not required, and this is where you will need to do some due diligence in your own environment, okay? We will generally see this indicator trigger in most environments because Entra ID Connect, Azure AD Connect, SharePoint on-prem do require these permissions. So it's very critical to make sure that when you're making any of these changes, you do your due diligence, you follow it through, you raise that change request to say, we're going to make a change, we don't believe it needs it, but if anything does break, we know how to put it back, okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to remove this in my environment. Very simple. Root of the domain, click on properties for me. Security. Now I'll just show you in the advanced view. Look for that one. Replicate admin, and we can see that it does have those 3 permissions required to do a DC sync attack, for example. Replicate directory changes, replicate synchronization, and replicate directory changes all. Okay. What I'll just do is I'll select it there, I'll hit remove, and I'll apply, and I hit OK. All right, good. What we'll do is we'll switch back up and we'll move on to the next one. What we're going to look at now is inheritance enabled on admin SD holder and permissions changes being made to the admin SD holder. Now the permission changes being made on an admin SD holder will trigger every time that you change the admin SD holder. It does not necessarily mean that this is a nefarious change. So for example, when I make the change to fix this, it will also record that that change occurred and that is going to trigger that here. So the one that I'll focus on is the inheritance being enabled. So we'll look at it. So tell us this is extremely critical because after all, admin SD holder, the permissions on admin SD holder then get templated in all of your security operators, domain admins, account operators, all those types of accounts. So if we make any changes on admin SD holder and they're being inherited, they are going to get stamped on our privileged accounts, which may mean that somebody has the ability to control those accounts that we do not. So what we'll do, we'll take the remediation guidance, we're going to check the permissions on admin SD holder, we're going to fix any incorrect access control entries. Now what we're going to look for is under system, we'll have admin SD holder. We're going to go to the security tab. Straight away, I can see that we have this user who is a direct member of the admin SD holder. They have full control, which means that they have the ability to reset the password for any domain admin in the environment, for example. I'll quickly remove that one just to make it easier for myself. And I'll hit on advanced and we can deal with the inheritance being enabled. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disable inheritance. I'm going to remove all inheritance, all inherited permissions, and I'll just hit apply. And what that's going to do is it's going to put it back to what it was before inheritance was enabled. Okay. I'll hit OK, and I'll hit OK. Again, this is one that you need to pay some due diligence to because certain applications such as CyberAttack, for example, will allow you to use admin SD holder to reset domain admin passwords without your account being domain admin. Okay. So pay attention to it. Again, if in doubt, raise that change request, document the change before doing anything. We flip back to report, and what we can see is we have now dealt with the majority of the critical ones. Okay, so we start looking at the warnings. So warnings are more configurations that exist in your environment that are not ideal. We need to fix. So for example, very quickly and very easily, we can see we have computer accounts and privilege groups. So we have an old backup server, backup dev 08, which is a member of the account operators group. Why this is a concern? Well, if somebody is a local admin on this server, that means that they can elevate to a system context, which means that they can authenticate to the network as the server, which means that they are now an account operator. We don't want that in our environment. So what we'll do, we'll remediate that one very quickly. We've got the account operators, we're just going to remove it. And then we'll work on the next. So the next one down, the main controller owner is not an administrator. So it's saying here that the owner of the domain controller, PC01, is actually my user. Now we've seen this environment where we've had the server team build domain controllers that were then promoted to domain controllers, but we still had the wrong owner set. So what I'll do is I'll just refer this back to the domain admins group, and we'll hit OK. And what we're going to do, let's focus on the next one. So what I'm going to try and do is we'll try and close out as many of these as time allows, and we'll see how good we can get that score. Okay. Operator groups are not empty. I'm not so worried about that one because I know in this environment we do have some members of the server operators group, so that's okay for us. Privileged owners with unprivileged owners. So let's take a look at this. So what this is saying is that we have an account, this desktop admin account, and it's owned by, again, my user account. Now what this means is that my user account can reset the password of this privileged account, which is obviously a vice privilege escalation. We don't want this to happen. So let's go in, find that desktop admin group, which is under here. Yep, under here. And we'll look at security. And then we'll just change. This is already reverted back to here because of the admin SD. So what we'll do, we'll hit OK, we'll hit OK. And we'll look at the next one. Now what's interesting is, because we actually fixed a couple of issues with the admin SD holder with that inheritance being disabled, it will actually fix the other indicators such as write access to the Kerberos DBT account, as well as shadow credentials on privileged objects. Okay. We have a privileged user with a service principal defined. This is a favorite one. And what this one is these are accounts that are primed for somebody to go ahead and Kerberos. Okay, so we have a server admin account, so a highly privileged tier 0 account, which for some reason has a service principal name or a SQL server in the environment. Now I know this SQL server does not exist anymore, and if I even try to ping it, it will tell me there is no such host. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to fix this account just by removing the service principal name from here. So we'll go in, we'll find the server admin to use under tier 0. So in here, we'll look up the active editor service principal name. We'll go ahead, we'll remove it. So now that account is somewhat safe from being privileged. Okay, so we made quite a few changes. Okay, we have gone ahead and remediated several critical indicators, several warnings. Let's run PurpleNet again because it's that quick. And let's see, we were at 63%, so let's see what we get now. Meanwhile, I'll have a quick scan in the messages to see if any of them. Okay, we'll just give this a second to run. So we will run this a few times during this session. Okay, so we're going from 63% to 78%. So we have a pretty big improvement straight away. So let's see what we have left, right? Like I mentioned, this one will keep coming back, unfortunately, because the way this works is that we are detecting changes. We are making changes to that admin SD holder object. So it is going to report that we're making changes to that. So what we see is I have one or two more here. Unprivileged principals as DNS admins. So let's have a look at this. So again, this is a warning, has a weight of 7, mapped against cyberattack and the ANSI framework. And what this is looking for is members of the DNS actors group, and the accounting group is a member of the DNS actors group for some reason. Now this could have just been an innocent typo that somebody made when they were trying to make some other change to the environment, but let's go ahead and remove that. Okay. Now, because we did change the admin SD holder permissions, that process runs out approximately every hour in an environment, okay? So it will go ahead and it will push those changes down across the environment and fix the permissions on things like your domain admins, your account operators. It's going to stamp that new set of permissions on those accounts. What we can actually do is we can actually go ahead and we can speed that up manually, okay? And we'll do that in just 1 second. The last one that I'll fix here is this unprivileged accounts. Now I'll show you this one. If you remember the backup DV08 server, it was a member of a privileged group. Okay, so it was a member of the backup operators group. It is no longer a member of the backup operators group, but it still has admin account second one. So this is just a housekeeping exercise. So let's go ahead and just clear that. So servers, backup 08, attribute editor, and then we'll go to admin account, goes on. Let's just clear the volume of that. Okay, so now what we'll do, and you don't have to remember this part because this is easily doable, or I can share this with you, is all I'm doing is connecting to Active Directory using lpp.exe. Okay, I've binded to the Active Directory as my domain admin account, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to run the command that says run sdprop now. And what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and it's going to ask it to go ahead and run sdprop. So we'll give that a few seconds, and what's going to happen is it's going to push all those permissions with the new admin SD holder values. Okay. Now, whilst that's running, what I would like to show is one of these indicators, if I can find them, is this operators groups that are not empty indicator. You'll see that it has a green tick saying that we've passed. Okay, so we have nothing that is a member of the operator group. Now, I know that not to be true, okay, because I do have a server admin account and it is a member of the server operators group. If you scroll over here, what you'll see is ignored equals true, okay? I like to think of these ignored as risk accepted. Okay, so we can say that for this environment, this account does need to be a member of here. We can choose to accept that risk. Okay, Purple Knight allows us the ability to create these kinds of exceptions in an environment to say, you know what, for us, this is great. This is what we want. It's fine. All of our server operators are managed by a PAM solution. They have complex passwords. They rotate every 20 hours, 8 hours, like that. Right? What we'll do is we'll also create an exception for, let's look at the indicator, and we'll use the one called this one, privileged accounts with a password that never expires. In my environment, I'm going to make the decision that I don't care that privileged accounts have never expiring passwords because we set it that way. They get rotated by CyberArk, delineate, I call it whatever you want, and service accounts, they get managed the same way. So what we'll do is we can actually create a JSON file, which I've already created here. See, yep, users, passwords never expires, admin.json. What we'll actually do is we'll make a rule within the JSON that just says distinguished name is like asterisk this. So anything that matches this will be committed in our environment. I'll copy that. Now I put this in the Purple Knight directory under here, under config. Now these indicator files only appear after you run Purple Knight and it's detected. So what I'll do is I'll just overwrite that one there, and I will show you the one that exists already for operator groups. So operator groups, you can see I've already included the server admin. Okay. What we'll do, we'll run this one more time, and hopefully it goes higher than 78%. Let's see where we get. This is just going to take us up. So yeah, it's going to run all the indicators again. Now you could have been selective against this. I could have just scrolled down and say just run it against the specific indicators that we really made a change to and we wanted to see what happens. But we'll run it against all of them so we can get that overall percentage and see how much benefit we've made to an environment. Okay, so we've gone from 63%, I think, to 86, which is a chunk of change difference for very minimal configurations. Now, this is a clean environment. It is my environment. Like I said, I don't have to raise change requests like you guys do in your production environment. But it gives you an idea how from making those small changes, we're able to really drastically improve the security of the environment. So the ones that I'm left with are ones that we really would need to go ahead and pay attention to and really kind of think of either saying for our environment, we're not worried about that, or yes, we maybe do need to implement certain things in the environment. Okay. Unprivileged users can add computer objects to the domain. We go ahead and can set that machine account quota to 0. That will remediate that. Protected users not in use. I don't have a particular requirement for it. I don't have any GMSAs, group managed service accounts in my environment, nor do I need them. The one here, the Kerberos TGT account password, if we were to read this, it's not been set since I built the domain. Now, the thing with that is we can reset this. There is PowerShell scripts out there. The creator of that PowerShell script to reset the Kerberos TGT account password, he's actually a good colleague of mine, George. So we could go ahead, we could reset that Kerberos TGT account password using the script. Ping pulls attention to not running it twice in quick succession, but actually planning that out, and that absolutely would require a change request in most environments that we do. Okay. Now something that's quite cool that I like is Purple Knight does give you an Excel file. Okay. So with the Excel file, what you can do is you can actually put in a pivot table. You can build out you can filter out all the indicators that you've passed, and you can sort by criticality, and you can do that kind of interest and stuff. You don't need to remember these PowerShell commands. I can share these with you guys after the call. If we run this, we can actually use PowerShell to read the Excel file, which is quite cool. And what you'll see is I've actually read the Excel file. This is the output from earlier today. We're going to import the file, and then we're going to look at the indicators results worksheet. And this gives you the same view as here. So what you'll see is you'll see the amount of indicators, how long the domain admin account that was used, or the admin account that was used to run it. And we can see all the ones that we passed in there. Now what you can actually do is you can use PowerShell queries in the pipeline to actually filter everything out. So click through these, 3 different filters. And what you can see is very quickly, I've taken that Excel file, I filter out everything that's passed, because I'm not so worried about the things that I passed. And now I have a work list to go through. So these would be the ones that we remediate today. We fixed the permissions changes on the admin ASCII holder. We fixed the inheritance. We disabled the principal order. We resolved the non-default principal syncs with BC rights in the domain. DNS admins. Now by fixing the admin ASCII holder, it automatically fixed the resource-based constrained allocation on the kernel's TGT account. We fixed the service principal name. We fixed some owners that had the wrong owner on the domain controllers and users groups to give you, and that's how you can use kind of PowerShell to say, build me a list of steps I should take and how we should prioritize remediation for these things. So with that being said, this is the end of the live demo. And if I can switch back to the presentation, we should see the presentation mode now, right? Are you back to seeing the presentation? Can somebody just give me a quick thumbs up? Yep, cool, perfect, thank you so much. So yeah, these are the IOEs that we remediated. We actually remediated a bunch more of these because time allowed. We did some indicator analysis with PowerShell, which for me is quite interesting because I don't really like using Excel, but doing it with PowerShell is a lot easier. So what next? So what do we do next? Well, Purple Knight is only one half of the story. Purple Knight is the first of 2 free tools from Semperis, and it's really focused around that cybersecurity assessment. Okay, so that's going to look at exactly what we just looked at today. It's looking at what types of configurations can impact the environment. Okay. We do have a secondary tool. Okay, that secondary tool is called Forest Druid, which is an attack path analysis tool. If you're familiar with Bloodhound or Avalanche, for example, it's our version of those, except we do everything slightly different. What we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on tier 0, and then we work our way out from there. Okay. And if there's interest, that's what we will base this second part of this webinar on. Is we'll actually look at an environment, not goodcompany.com. What we'll actually look at is badcompany.com, which has a lot more bad stuff in there and a lot worse allegations. And we'll actually use Forest Druid to show how we can kind of protect the perimeter of Active Directory, protect those critical accounts in Active Directory, all of our tier 0 assets, and limit the impact for lateral movement into our Active Directory environment. Okay. So, do we have any questions?
Awesome, great presentation, Chris. Yes, we do have some questions, and just a reminder to the audience, you can still ask your questions on the console and we will try to get to it. We do have some time left, so yeah, make sure to take this opportunity. And we did get a question, just a clarification question. I'm sure you went over it, but the tool that you were demoing, is it free for download?
Absolutely, 100%. Yep. Semperis.com/purple-knight.com. You may have to put in an email address, but outside of that, it's completely free to download and use.
Awesome, and I believe that should be available on the console, so you can check it out there, guys. Perfect. And just got a question in here. Let's see, what are some common misconceptions or myths about Active Directory security? And how does adopting a snackable approach help dispel these misconceptions?
So I think the idea behind the snackable approach was that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can just do little parts at a time, making little improvements to try and increase the security of your environment. I think one of the misconceptions is that it's impossible to fix the issues that you have in Active Directory. That's just not true. Active Directory is going to be around for quite some time, so I definitely think it's worth taking those small steps towards remediation. Certain things are obviously going to be 100 times harder to fix than others. For example, with the print spooler, that's super easy. We don't have printers running on domain controllers. Turn that off straight away. But then you have slightly more complex ones like, okay, well, those accounts that can replicate permissions for the domain, are they still needed? You need to do your due diligence on those. But absolutely, even making the smallest amount of changes is going to reduce that attack from your AP.
Great, we got a question here. Is there some way of adding exceptions? For example, accounts used to enable SSO requires special rights on AD.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can use those. We refer to them as indicator ignore lists. I prefer to refer to them as list acceptance lists. In the Purple Knight documentation, there is details on how you can go ahead and you can break those kind of exclusions. You can either use pattern matching or you can use regex, for example. But you can absolutely go ahead and say, you know what, for our environment, the group managed service account, the Entra AD Connect or Entra ID Connect is using, that needs to be there. We know it. We know that password is extremely secure. It's rotated. It's a GMSA. Make that exception, and then it will not reduce your overall security posture score. It will still alert you if something new in that category comes up, but it will not alert you for the exemption.
Awesome. We just got a question in for Matthew. He asks, Entra AD tool also runs with a low permission user?
Yeah, so for the Entra ID, what you will need to do is you will need to create an application registration. The details of all the permissions are in the documentation. However, they are all read-only permissions. So they're not, there's no read-write permissions, it's just read-only. So yeah, no permissions. But you will need an Entra admin to create that registration for you.
Nice. And we got not a question from Greg, but a cool statement. He says, in the span of this presentation, I've downloaded and installed Purple Knight, ran reports on our AD, and received a score that was sad and made a couple changes and improved the score by 5%. So that's pretty cool. Some double tasking from Greg out there.
So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and then let's see, we got one question here. How do we prioritize remediation?
So for me, prioritize a remediation based on risk. So the critical indicators are ones that I would definitely focus on. I would always not neglect the quick wins because there's also closing doors and avenues that bad guys can take advantage of. But absolutely focus on the critical ones first because they have been known to lead directly to the main bottlenecks.
Great. We got another question from Luis. He asks, are the same indicators that are showed in Semperis AD? Should we use both tools?
Do you mean Semperis DSP? Or you? I'm just checking the same indicators that showed in Semperis AD. Should we use both tools? If you are a Semperis DSP customer, which is obviously the commercial product, the paid product, it actually has more indicators right now than Purple Knight. So I would always go with DSP. If you're a DSP customer, use DSP. It's going to be running that continuously for you anyway. And you can just go in there and you can pull out the latest report if that's something you want to go ahead and do. Is that what you meant, Luis? Hopefully that's what you meant. You were a DSP customer, which makes me happy. But yeah, absolutely use DSP over
Cool. Another question from James here. He asks, does this need to be run on a domain controller or can it be run from a workstation from a computer connected to the domain?
Yeah, so please don't run it on a domain controller. That's not best practice. I was running it on a domain controller purely for the demo environment. You can run it on any Windows workstation that's connected to the domain. You run it as a low privilege user on a Windows 11 box, for example. I was just using it on the domain controller just purely for demo. Please don't do that. Just run it on a Windows workstation. That's fine.
Great. And I think we got through all the questions. Please send in your questions. We'll get them over to Chris if you still have any. But yeah, looks like we got through them all. Thanks, Chris, for being here today.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you for the attendance and the big questions as well. Hopefully, you have some benefit from it. Hopefully, you can guys and girls can also download Purple Knight, find some use of it, and be interested to hear any feedback.
Great. Yeah, thanks to the audience for attending today's webcast, sponsored by Semperis and presented by Redmond Mag. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.